Yo, what is going on, guys? And welcome back to another video. Welcome to what we are calling the season 2 premiere of the Empire podcast. It is great to be back with another video. And of course, we have to start season 2 off with the same exact way that we started season 1 of the Empire podcast. It's that time of the year. It is time for the MLB Free Agent Predictions. If you haven't seen part 1 of our predictions, they're over on Instagram. We're going to be talking about all of the guys that we covered in part 1 over on Instagram. Also going to be on TikTok as well shortly. But before we get into that, Alex, we do have some big news regarding the Empire podcast and what is to come for 2026 and beyond. So if you want, I'd love for you to take the honors and announce this very special announcement we have when it comes to our channel here on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram. Big things to come. Alex, take it away.
All right, so going forward, we will be changing or rebranding low key. We're going to be changing the podcast name from Empire Podcast to Melo and Jake Show, which means we get to expand on what we talk about. It doesn't have to be strictly about just New York sports. We can expand on a bunch of different things. So it's going to be a lot better going forward, and I'm excited for it as well. But I'm really excited for today. We got this is what we've been waiting for, for a while, because this is what we started this podcast for. So this is going to be a good sign. And let's see what we can do, man. I'm really excited. Let's go.
This was something we had talked about for a while. Obviously, the Empire podcast is what, you know, gave us the motivation to continue doing this, especially when we came back just a couple of months ago. And we want to continue to expand, like Alex said. So the Jake and Melo Show, that is the name. The Jake and Melo Show will be coming in 2026. Don't worry. It's going to be everything that you find under here, under the Empire podcast. No new Instagram, nothing like that. But everything will be rebranded to the Jake and Melo Show. We're happy about it. We're excited. Big things to come to for the future, but also big things to talk about right now, Alex. Because like we said, it is time for the MLB free agent predictions. And for me, this is the most fun time of the year. MLB off season is always so much fun. Obviously, the season itself is great, but predicting where players are going to go, I always found to be pretty cool.
Yes.
But a lot of time and effort went into these predictions for me and Alex. If you haven't looked at our graphics of each individual player, they were worked on for hours end trying to figure out predictions, making these graphics for each player in the top 30. So a lot of time went into this. So we'd appreciate it if you guys could hit the like button, subscribe, and comment, whether it's on Instagram, on our TikToks, or even here on YouTube. Let us know some of your predictions, where you think guys are going to go, and maybe what you disagree with. But I think that's going to get us into our predictions for part 1. We're covering a couple of our honorable mentions, as well as numbers 30 to 21.
In this video, I'll read out the players, and then we'll both give out the teams that we picked, and then we'll go from there. We'll explain why we chose that team and the fit and all that stuff. So
I think we're going to start with honorable mentions, correct?
let's do honorable mentions first. I think the first name on that list is Ryan O'Hearn. I had him going to the Tampa Bay Rays, and Jake had him going to the Phillies. So I'll explain why I think he's going to the Rays. I actually had a multiple of different teams. I think he's a good player. He's a good player that can play, the corner outfields, first base. He's a left-handed bat. He's been good for the last couple of years. He was just a power guy with Kansas City for a while, and then now the bat to ball skills has gotten better. I think a lot of teams are going to be in on him, but also I do think it's a situation where the Rays do give him the most money. That's why I have him going to the Rays, but I do think the teams like Padres, Braves can be interested in him as well. But I ultimately went with the Braves the Rays, because I think they give him the most money, because they don't know how to spend their money. They spend their money on, guys like Ryan O'Hearn. So that's why I have Ryan O'Hearn going to the Rays. But I'm interested to see why you haven't gone to the Phillies, because the Phillies, I think.
Yeah, I mean, first hearing Rays and most money is not something I would have heard in the Big 26. But at the end of the day, I think Ryan O'Hearn, Tampa, makes a little bit of sense. Seems like the kind of guy they would go after and maybe spend a little money on.
Exactly.
but I have O'Hearn going to the Phillies for a couple of reasons. Obviously, with Kyle Schwarber being a free agent, they would possibly need a replacement for him. But even if they do bring back Kyle Schwarber, they could look to fill in that corner outfield spot. I've heard rumors that Bryce Harper could possibly move back to the outfield.
Mhm.
So in that case, that would clear up a spot for maybe Ryan O'Hearn at first base. But either way, I think Ryan O'Hearn was someone who was talked about going to the Phillies at the trade deadline. And instead of it being at the trade deadline, I think Ryan O'Hearn is going to head to Philadelphia this offseason. And for our honorable mentions, we did not give contracts. It was only 3 honorable mentions. And then for our top 30, we gave contracts, details, all that kind of stuff. So for Ryan O'Hearn, I have him going to the Phillies, which brings us to our next guy, another Ryan, a guy who finished off the season honestly better than he had started because he got traded at the deadline to my New York Mets and he stunk up the bed for the Mets for half of his appearances and they were all in the first half, but finished off strongly. I believe finished off with 7 or 8 scoreless innings. So I'm going to be interested to see what his market looks like. But the next guy we're talking about is Ryan Helsley, and I'll kick this one off. And I think Ryan Helsley is going to head to Sacramento. I think he's going to go to the A's. I think with the trade of Mason Miller at the deadline to San Diego, I mean, how honestly, Mason Miller's such a great pitcher, but if Ryan Helsley could finish it out, you're telling me that, the A's were able to get rid of Mason Miller for the number one prospect in baseball and then add a closer like Ryan Helsley, I think could be a really good move for them. It could be a smart move. And the A's, with the Severino signing last offseason was a little sneak peek of like, listen, we're gonna be active in the market going forward, especially as they look to head into Vegas in a couple years. I think they want to put together a good team for when they're out there. So I think Ryan Helsley is a good guy for the back end of their bullpen. Obviously, is a need now with the Mason Miller trade earlier this year. So Ryan Helsley to Sacramento. It's weird to say Sacramento, but to Sacramento.
I actually like that. Like you explained that pretty well. I actually like that fit. But I think also the fit that I have with him going to the Nationals also works as well. They've been searching for kind of a guy, like their guy, a closer, a lockdown closer. Although he wasn't like that with the Mets, as you said. I do think he still has the stuff to be an elite closer. So I do think the Nationals spend a little bit of money, hopefully, because they usually don't. But I do think the Nationals spend money this time. They get their closer for now, and I do think this is a good fit. And I do like your fit as well, though. It's kind of like a bad team that kind of just needs a good shutdown guy.
And a team that's not too far off either. I mean, they have some good players in Oakland and even Washington.
Yeah, they have
They were so bad. I mean, James Wood was so bad in that second half, but
Mhm,
those are two teams that have some pretty good young players that they can build around.
exactly. But for the next player, I think we both had the same pick here, right? I
We
think
did have the same pick for our last honorable mention. We did.
yeah, Brandon Woodruff. We both had him going to the Diamondbacks. I think that fit is kind of just makes a lot of sense with them.
They
Maybe
need a starter. They need pitching so bad. And Corbin Burns, doubt he'll be ready by opening day, probably by midseason.
Mhm.
But where was Corbin Burns? He came from Milwaukee. Well, from Baltimore, but recently also played with Milwaukee with Woodruff. So that connection is already there. I think it's a good connection. I think it's a spot where I can see Brandon Woodruff pitching well. I think the reason he didn't crack our top 30 for any of you wondering is just he has battled injuries a lot. He has this stuff. We all know that. We just want to see a little bit more consistency out of him. So we decided to give a spot to a guy that pitched all of last season and could potentially get a bigger deal than Brandon Woodruff, which leads us into our top 30.
30. Yep.
And at number 30, we have Boston Red Sox starting pitcher Lucas Giolito. He's opted out. He is going to be a free agent, and he just cracks our top 30. 26 starts in 2025. He had a 10-4 record, 3.41 ERA, and just had a very solid season for Baltimore for a team that snuck into the playoffs as a 6th seed. And, although it didn't go their way in the first round, we know the type of potential that Boston Red Sox team has. And Lucas Giolito showed the type of potential that he has in 2025. But Starting off with my prediction of where I think Lucas Giolito is going to go, I think he's going to be headed to the West Coast, to the Anaheim Angels, not the Los Angeles Dodgers, who seem to sign everybody. I think he's going to be headed to the Los Angeles Angels, and I think this could be a move for them that they just hired Kurt Suzuki to be their manager for 1 year, a little bit of an iffy situation. But the Angels are always one of those teams that sneakily spends money even though they haven't been good. I think they know that that window with Mike Trout is closing, and they want to at least bring at least one postseason appearance for Mike Trout because he has one, but I think it was in 2014. It's about time. Not saying this is a move that's going to get them over the edge, but I think that this is a move that can definitely help out their starting rotation, who has a couple of youngsters in it right now alongside Yusei Kikuchi.
Yeah, I like that. Like when you explained it to me before, I like that pick. I do think Giolito has a lot to prove still because he was really elite a couple years ago, and then had a lot of injuries. Then had a bounce back year last year. So I do think he does get paid just because of the year he had last year. But I do think after the shooter news this morning that he does go to the Cubs. I think the Cubs, they just again like a team like the Angels who need pitching, but a team that makes more sense for Giolito because they are trying to contend, and they're going to contend. Um, Hopefully, if they can, use their money correctly this offseason. But I do have him signing with the Cubs. I do think I like the fit a little bit more than the Angels, but I see why you said the Angels as well.
I
But
agree. I agree with that. I think the Cubs is a very good fit.
yeah, he can make a good push with them, especially they're kind of a team like the Red Sox. But I don't know. I think he does change it up. I do think that he gets a little bit more money from the Cubs. I do think the Red Sox had a lot of issues of their own that they're going to try to figure out this offseason. I just don't think Giolito's in the Red Sox plans, but so I do have him leaving the Red Sox. But I think the Cubs are a good fit.
I agree. And I forgot to mention what I have Lucas Giolito getting,
Mm-hmm.
but I have him signing for 3 years, 63 million, so around that $21 million AAV, I
Yep.
think is what he'll get. It's going to be interesting to see what the starting pitching market is going to look like because a lot of guys are going to be receiving qualifying offers, and teams are very hesitant to spend to get a player with a qualifying offer because you will lose that pick.
Mm-hmm.
But I think at the end of the day, Giolito ends up with the Angels 3 years, 63 million, and I believe you had something similar. I think it was two
Yeah.
years, 41.
Mm-hmm. About around that 20 year, like 20 mil per year, is like pretty reasonable for a guy like him.
I agree. So
Um.
that takes us to number 29. And for me, this is one of, if not the most interesting free agent because he's definitely I don't know what to expect when it comes to his market. I don't know what it's going to come down to with the teams interested in him, what kind of money he gets. Very interesting player. Of course, we are talking about Luis Arias, second baseman slash first baseman slash DH, can't play defense. Um, but if you want, you can start off with your prediction, but I will give you a heads up. We do not think Luis Arias is going to get a good market in the sense of the teams that are interested in him.
Nah, yeah, we have pretty laughable teams when you think about it, but it kind of makes sense, like for these teams to pursue him because they just kind of need a player like Arise. I know he's not like the greatest player in the world, but he's kind of a guy who could play multiple positions. Cheap. Like both of these teams are going to be cheap. I have him going to the White Sox because I think the White Sox are pretty cheap. They're one of the worser teams in the league. And for a guy like Arise, who's like we all know what Arise could be when he's great, and he's just not been good recently. So I think a team like the White Sox is kind of suitable for him. But again, both of these teams that we have are pretty laughable. But they're you know is you're playing in the MLB at the end of the day, so it's not like we could be laughing. But again, this is the prediction that I got. I have him signing 2 years, 31, so around like 16 mil a year. I think that's pretty reasonable for a guy like him. He could produce at a high level, get on base. But yeah, not really like a lot of teams going to be in on him. So I think this is a deal he kind of accepts kind of later on in free agency, like kind of around February, March, right before spring training. He just signs it, pops up with this deal. But yeah, I think this is
Yeah, I think usually when you hear about guys signing so late, you think, oh, they're probably just going to get a 1 year deal. But I think it's going to be more
Mhm.
of the sense that it's going to take longer and he's going to get a multi-year contract from a team that's not good at all, and he'll just be like, all right, I'll take it.
Yeah.
So I have him going 3 years, 36 million to the Colorado Rockies. Huge outfield out there in cores. I mean, this guy could legit bat 350 in cores. An absolutely huge outfield for a guy who just simply serves baseballs into the outfield. That's all he does. That's all Luis Ariz is. He he even struggled a little bit with the bat this year, batting 292, which although a lot of guys didn't even hit 300 this year, Ariz is a guy we know for hitting 320, 330. I think at some point in 2024 he was batting 400 at one point. So definitely going to be an interesting market. I have him getting 12 million per year there for 3 years. Colorado, they seem to give out weird contracts every couple of years, and I think this year is that every couple of years, and it's Luis Ariz. So that wraps up number 29. And for number 28, we have Merrill Kelly. But before we get into Merrill Kelly, me and Alex are doing a little bit of a competition for our free agent predictions. So we're actually going to be implementing a point system. So basically, how it's going to work is for every team that we get correct for a player. So let's just say, for example, Lucas Giolito ends up going to the Cubs. Alex will automatically get 2 points. And if you get the years of the contract correct, he will also receive an additional point. So you can get up to 3 points per player, one for the contract, two for the team. So that's how we're doing it. And then when all of free agency wraps up, we are beginning the MLB season. We will look back at our predictions and see whose ball knowledge is better. So we'll see. And if our boy Steven is watching this, I know he's probably thinking, well, neither of you have ball knowledge. You don't know anything. You're a bandwagon Dodgers fan. Thank you very much. Moving on, we have Merrill Kelly. He started 32 games in 2025. Very solid year for Merrill Kelly and a very consistent pitcher in Merrill Kelly. A little bit older, 38 years old, I believe now, but pitched to a 3.5 ERA in 2025. Just a very consistent pitcher, whip in the low 1-1s. So, I mean, a very solid pitcher here in Merrill Kelly. I think for my prediction is that Merrill Kelly will be heading to the Houston Astros. He just spent time with the Texas Rangers, so it won't be too big of a move for a veteran. He is also a Houston native, and the Astros are looking for veteran pitching, especially if Framber Valdez does not return in free agency this offseason. I have Merrill Kelly to the Astros 1 year, $16 million.
Yeah, I like that. I like that pick a lot. I think we kind of got the contracts alike. There's just a 1 year deal. He's kind of like 38 years old now. He's coming off a great year, so I think he's earned himself the millions of dollars per year. But I think a team like the Brewers who are losing Woodruff, I think we both have him losing Woodruff. Probably, I don't know if Peralta picked up the option yet or not. I think he does have an option.
Freddie Peralta did pick up the
Yeah, so he
option.
picked up the
It was a
option.
club option. They picked it up. So well, he's on the roster as of right now. We'll see if he's on the actual
Yeah.
roster for opening day.
So we know the Brewers are probably going to need a starter. This is a perfect fit for them, in my eyes. A guy who can always, who's very reliable, especially for his age, is very reliable. And I think the problem with the Brewers wasn't even the hitting when they lost to the Dodgers. I think it was kind of, well, it's hard to beat the Dodgers. It's hard to say. But I do think the starting pitcher, they had no starter really go deep in that series. And I do think if they have more starters throughout the year, they can have a higher success. They won 100 games, but I do think they can go deeper in the playoffs if they have more options to go to. So I do like Morel going to the Brewers here.
Yeah, I mean, 2 of those 4 games that the Brewers played against the Dodgers, they had Aaron Ashby start and pitch an inning.
Exactly.
So
So
it says a lot.
they need.
Moving on, we have number 27, a guy that I've always been a fan of. He's a former Met, former Yankee, New York native from the area. Harrison Bader is our next guy that we're going to talk about. And what a season for Harrison Bader. For a guy that we know is a plus defender, he really excelled with the bat this year, especially when he got moved to the Phillies. He had that couple of week stretch where he was just mashing at the plate. And Harrison Bader, before I get into my prediction, Harrison Bader is the type of guy that he loves going to big markets. the Mets, the Yankees, being with Philly now. He's played on a lot of big market teams, and I think he's going to continue to do so. And he will be going to a team that was in the 2025 World Series, but not the Dodgers. I think Harrison Bader is going to end up with the Toronto Blue Jays. Right now, they have a couple of guys in their outfield, but Dalton Varsho is actually just coming off of shoulder surgery, and he played in the World Series. But the question of how long he can play the outfield for, they might want to save some of his longevity. So I think plugging a guy in with like Bader in center field would be perfect for them, moving Varsho to the corners. And then on top of that, Harrison Bader fits their mold. They're a defensive first team, their speed, this is what the Blue Jays are. And I think Harrison Bader would be a perfect fit for the Toronto Blue Jays. I have him signing 1 year, $14 million.
Okay, good pick, good predictions. I do think I agree with everything you said, but I do think it would be very hard to see the Phillies just letting this like go. I do think he re-signs with the Phillies. I think they need to keep him. You saw what he did with them last year. They need to keep a guy like this, great defense, and then he always excels in the big moments. He did it with the Yankees a couple years back. I do think he plays well in big markets, so the Blue Jays is not like far off. But I do think the Phillies need to bring back their guys if they want to have a chance. If they don't bring back their guys, they're not going to have that much of a chance. So their guys, their stars are getting older. Turner, Wheeler, Harper, they're all getting older. You want to win, you got to kind of bring back your guys, and then you add from that. You can't let a lot of guys walk and then see what happens. No, you can't do that. You got to bring back the guys. I think Bader does resign, and I think that's huge for them. If they want to have success next year, they got to bring back this guy. I think it starts with bringing back guys like this guy, and then someone we'll talk about later.
And speaking of talking about our next players coming up,
Yeah.
because at number 26, we have a guy that really, last offseason when he re signed with this team, it was a little bit confusing, but man, this team ended up going on a deep run in the playoffs, and he was a big reason why. We were talking about second baseman Jorge Polanco. I mean, what a season for Jorge Polanco. I mean, 265. He had 26 home runs this year, something that we normally do not see out of Jorge Polanco. But what a great year for Jorge Polanco. 26 home runs, 821 OPS. I mean, this was a great year for him. For a lot of my predictions, for a long time while working on these predictions, I had him re-signing with Seattle. But I don't have him re-signing with Seattle. And I don't know if it's going to be a mistake on the Mariners' part or Polanco's part. But I think Jorge Polanco fits this team so well, the team that I have him going to. I have Jorge Polanco signing a 2-year deal with the San Francisco Giants. This is a team that needs help at the second base position, and Jorge Polanco proved in the postseason that he can live up to the big moments. And there's no one in the world that loves big postseason hitters more than Buster Posey. And this is a year where they're going to be big, they're going to spend big, or they're going to be going after a lot of guys in free agency after the hiring of Tony Vitello. I think the Giants are looking to add pieces that can help them win and go out and win a World Series. No better guy to bring in than a guy that exceeded in the biggest moments of the postseason than Jorge Polanco. 2 years, $25 million to the San Francisco Giants. Maybe a little bit on the lower side in terms of AAV, the contract, but I don't know. We'll see what he gets, but I think 2 years to the San Francisco Giants.
Yeah, I don't know where you got that contract from. I think he had one of the better seasons of his career last year. So I do have him getting 3 years, 61, but I do have him returning to the Mariners. I there's a big. It's not a big market, but there's a decent market for second basemen out there. So I do see why you can have him leaving. There is guys like Torres available, that they can pick up. But I do think the Mariners. He played really well in Seattle. I think they should retain him. I think he's really good. And another thing is, if they don't get him, it's not the end of the world. So it's like I can see why you have him leaving. I just do think he returns here. I couldn't really see a lot of other fits. Like you said, I think you told me earlier his market's going to be very weird. So I do have it being very weird, but I have it weird to the point where he kind of stays with the team. But again, I could see other options. This is one of my picks that I'm not really confident about.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything you said. Like I said, I had the Mariners retaining Polanco for the longest, but I think it was just
Yeah.
late second decision where it's a guy where you wouldn't really expect to move on that does, and I think Jorge Polanco is that guy for me. But if they end up re-signing if he ends up re-signing to the Mariners, it wouldn't be a shock. But I think San Francisco is a really good fit for him, and that'll lead into our next guy, number 25, a guy who could either be really good or stink it up. And we're talking about Jack Flaherty, spent last year with Detroit, and in 32 starts, he was 8-15. He actually led, I don't know if it's the American League or the MLB in losses. So 15 losses on the season for which is kind of interesting when you think about that he led the loss category on a team that excelled in 2025. So some question marks there with Flaherty, 4.64 ERA. Strikeouts were there, however, 188 strikeouts.
Pretty good.
So we know he has the swing and miss stuff. Can he control it is the question, which will lead into my prediction. And this is the second time I'm mentioning this team. A team that you wouldn't expect me to mention two times. But I have Jack Flaherty heading to the West Coast, not to the Dodgers, but to the Anaheim Angels. And I know, whoa, you have two guys in the top 30 going to the Angels. For those of you who don't know, Lucas Giolito and Jack Flaherty were actually teammates at Harvard Westlake High School, and they played baseball there together alongside Max Fried as well. But they were teammates there. They went to high school just a couple of minutes away from Anaheim, and like I said, I think the Angels are going to press this offseason, and I think I'm more confident in the Angels signing Jack Flaherty than I am Lucas Giolito. But I can definitely see a world where they sign both, and in Jake's world, they signed both. I have him going to the Angels, 4 years, $88 million.
That's just a funny one.
I think it's a great prediction. Maybe Giolito's a stretch, but Flaherty to the Angels, that's the
Yeah,
type of pitcher that they spend money on, and he ends up having a 6 ERA over 4 years.
yeah, exactly. And the fact that he played in Los Angeles a few years ago or a year ago, it makes a lot of sense. So I'm not going to knock it, but
Big California.
The Angels spending. I think. Let's see. You had them getting Flaherty for 88 mil, and then you had Giolito signing 63 mil. So them spending 150 million on two pitchers is kind of like I don't know. We'll see. But I have him going to the Orioles. Um, I had him going to the Orioles because again, last year I think I had the Orioles getting like 6 or 7 dudes, and I was very wrong. I think I'm going to be a little lighter on the Orioles because we saw what they were kind of last year. They're a team that's not willing to spend, not willing to improve, not willing to care. So I think they get a guy who doesn't really care with 15 losses last year, and Jack Flaherty. But I do think he's a guy who could be maybe a slightly better Charlie Morin. Who knows? But really, I do think he does get a decent contract, but I do think he has a lot to prove after the year he had last year. So I think the Orioles kind of like that. I do think they go after him.
So you have another Harvard Westlake guy going to Baltimore, because for those of you who don't
I
know,
think I picked
in
Freed.
2024, Alex had Max Fried going to the Baltimore Orioles. What a prediction that was. He wants to talk about me having two Angels going in the bottom half of free agency. He had three of the top 10 free agents going to Baltimore last year. Wow. I mean, that was rough. It's rough to look at now, look back at now. Three guys. He had Roki, he had Max Fried, and I believe Santander re-signing.
I had Burns. I don't forgot who it was.
You had Burns too. I don't know how you.
I had like 9 dudes going to the Orioles, bro. I thought they would be like, oh shit.
If you want to save your eyes, don't look at our free agent predictions from last year.
Yeah.
I promise this year will be better. Take our word.
Yes.
But that moves on to our next guy, a guy that I don't think we have to talk too heavily about,
Yeah.
but a guy that's definitely a coveted free agent because of the lack at the position. Number 24, we have Philadelphia Phillies catcher JT Realmuto. Put together a decent year with the bat, nothing too crazy. 12 home runs, 257 average, 700 OPS. So not the greatest numbers, but we know what JT Realmuto brings, and he brings defense, he brings leadership behind that plate. And that is going to be coveted by, I think, a couple of good teams. I think the Padres could be interested in him, and I wouldn't be surprised if he has a reunion with Miami. I think is another big possibility. Looking for a defensive catcher, a guy that can definitely lead that young crew in Miami. But I find it hard to believe that JT Realmuto is not in a Phillies jersey. I mean, this is a guy they need to resign. They don't have anybody else at that position. And I know Kyle Schwarber's their top free agent, but if there's one guy I feel they need to bring back, it's JT Realmuto. It's that leadership, that defensive catcher behind the plate. JT Realmuto brings so much to that Phillies ball club. He needs to resign. I think he resigns. 2 years, $30 million back to the Phillies.
I agree. I have him to on a similar contract. I do think there's going to be an opt out there just because he's kind of older. I do think he would accept the deal if he was offered 2 to 3 years. He would accept it for sure. But then again, I don't know if the Phillies are willing to go to that extent just because of his age. So I do have the opt out. But I agree with everything you said. I could see him going to a team like the Marlins as well, or just another team who kind of just wants a veteran. If he ends up getting paid more somewhere else, he would probably take that deal. But I do think the Phillies should and need to bring him back for sure.
I agree. I 100% agree. I don't see a world where JT Realmuto's
Mm-hmm.
not back in a Phillies jersey. And
Exactly.
if he isn't, then I guess we're wrong.
Yeah.
But this is gonna take us into our last three guys, number 23, 22, and 21. And funny enough, they are all now former Yankees. So, and that's starting off with number 23, former Yankee from 2024. He was with the Detroit Tigers this year. We're talking about Gleyber Torres. And this is a interesting free agent to say the least because I think he will actually have more shooters than Jorge Polanco. Although Polanco did have that good postseason, I think Gleyber Torres, he's younger. I mean, people forget Gleyber Torres is only 27, 28 years old. I mean, he's still in his prime. And that takes me into my prediction. And this is the reason why I think Jorge Polanco is not going to be a Mariner. Because I think that the age difference is of value, him only being 27, 28, still in those prime years. And I think Seattle is going to value that. And I think Gleyber Torres is going to be headed to the Seattle Mariners on a 3-year, $50 million deal. I think it's a very fair contract. I think it's a contract the Mariners would love to take on. A younger player, fits their mold. Cal Raleigh, I believe, is still in his late 20s, maybe early 30s. And then Julio Rodriguez, obviously, we know is a young phenom in the MLB right now. So I think it fits their mold better. I think it fits, what the Mariners are trying to build. And that's why I ultimately had Polanco leaving, because for the longest, I had Polanco staying with the Mariners and Torres staying with the Tigers. But I looked at it. I think the Mariners will value the age. And so I have Gleyber Torres heading to Seattle, and as previously stated, Polanco to San Francisco, which is interesting enough because
We have it vice versa. I have him going to the Giants and then the Mariners keeping Polanco. But that's pretty cool that we pretty much predicted the opposite thing to happen. Imagine if none of that happens, they both go somewhere else, then we just
they're
look.
going to go to like the Reds or something.
Yeah. But yeah, I have him going to the
But
Giants.
yeah, just so you guys know, we did not talk about our predictions at all
Yeah.
together. We actually did them completely separate, and then literally he just told me, "All right, these are my predictions." Blah 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 blah. Once I was done with mine, made the graphics, and then that's how we got here. So,
Yeah.
kind of crazy that we had the same two teams, just vice versa.
Exactly.
So
But
it's gonna be interesting if it actually is those two teams. That'll be pretty crazy
no, yeah, that's
to uh,
facts.
to
and,
see.
and we do, and with these predictions, when we do the point system, we did kind of both choose different years for all of them, just to see.
Almost every single team, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
almost every single player. Yeah, there was only a couple that we agreed with, so it's going to be interesting. One of us is going to get blown out of the water.
Yeah.
Knowing my luck, it'll probably be me, but it's okay. You know?
It's gonna be fun to see. But I do have Glaber going to the Giants for pretty much the opposite reason of you, just the opposite team. I think that Polanco stays, and then the Giants do need a second baseman. And the Giants, I do have the Giants actually spending because I do think they have a window now that they can win. They actually,
Me too.
yeah, they actually played really well in the first half of last year. Or not really well. They played pretty well, and then they started selling towards the middle. And then obviously their season was over. They were still in it though. They were still in the
The
wild card.
Giants are definitely a team that this is not the last time you're going to be hearing them across these 3 episodes of free agent predictions.
Exactly, because I think Buster is going to want to spend. We kind of thought he would spend last year, but then we didn't see the trade until obviously they traded in April for Rafael Devers. So that shows that he's being aggressive to a certain extent. So I do think they do spend a lot this offseason. I think they do have Rafi in his prime. He's only like what 26 years old or 27, something like that. So I think Buster realizes that he wants to spend. He does spend. So I do have him getting Gleyber Torres just to start, just only to start. It fills in a position that they need, and I do obviously like Gleyber Torres. He was with the Yankees, so a lot of good things to say about him. But moving on to our next Yankee, Devin Williams. I have him going to your Metropolitans, and I do think he signs a 2-year deal just to be kind of that second guy next to Diaz, because I do think I have Diaz resigning with the Mets or not picking up his option with the Mets. But I do think Williams, if he goes to the Mets, could be a great setup man. If he's willing to be a setup man, he'll be a great setup man.
So, just a quick question. Is it possible that Devin Williams is the new closer for the Mets? Is it possible that you might have Edwin Diaz leaving?
I think it is likely. But
We'll see.
I don't know. I think Devin
You're
Williams.
gonna have to tune in for part 3
Yeah,
of the free agent predictions to find out where we have Edwin Diaz going.
that's gonna be a fun one. But I think Devin Williams as a setup really actually works really well with the Mets. I don't know why. I just see it. You've been talking about it for the longest, and now I see it finally now it working out and it panning out. I think he'd be elite as a late inning, eighth inning guy to Diaz. And I feel like the Mets' problem was obviously blowing leads with the bullpen. I think he can help that 100% because he was great from I think August to basically the postseason. He was good. So
Yeah.
I think he carries that on. He can play. He showed that he can play in New York, which is huge. So
And in a stadium like Citi Field, which is known for being a pitching friendly ballpark, you know, the airplanes always coming over Citi Field, pushing every ball down. So
mhm.
I also have Devin Williams going to the NL East, but not to the Mets, not to the Phillies, and not to the Atlanta
That's
Braves.
great.
I think Devin Williams is going to be headed to the Miami Marlins, a team that is so close. They have so many good young players. As a Mets fan, obviously, I know that because Miami eliminated my New York Mets on game 162. But I don't think they're that far off. And if they can get a guy, an elite closer to close out games for them, look out. Miami might be a sneaky team to sneak into the postseason next year because they have the pitching. They have the pitching. They have one of the better rotations in baseball. And they have a couple of young guys in their lineup that can really exceed and break out next year. So I have Devin Williams to Miami, 2 years, $32 million with a player option. And I know you didn't state it, but you have him to the Mets, 2 years, 34.5. So this was one of those scenarios where we both believe he's going to get a 2-year deal. And right around the same thing. I had 32 million, you had 34.5.
Yeah.
So that's Devin Williams. And that takes us into our last guy for our free agent predictions, part 1, numbers 30 to 21, including honorable mentions. We have another former Yankee, a guy who spent 2025 with the Yankees and had a breakout year. In 159 games, he hit for 235, but he hit 34 home runs, 74 RBIs, 811 OPS, 3.5 WAR. Really solid season. Center fielder Trent Grisham is the last guy we're going to be talking about. And you can take the honors. I can take the honors wherever we want to go. We do have 2 different teams.
Yeah, I'll go first. I think, because alluding to my point earlier, I think the Giants spend, so I do have him going to the Giants. Another fit that I actually like, they need an outfielder. I know they have Jung Ho Lee in center, but he can play the corners. And I do think they kind of need a guy like him. I think left field, or excuse me, right field in San Fran is actually pretty shallow. So I think that helps with Grisham's swing. He's going to be hitting a lot of homers into the water. But I do think he's a guy that is very risky. So he's not going to get a lot of money because you can't bet on him being consistent. So that's why I do have him getting $55 million. But I do think he fits a team like the Giants who need hitters
over 3 years, not AAV.
Yeah. No. Yeah. But, yeah, I think he fits with the team like Giants. I think they need him. not him specifically, but they do need guys that like Trent Grisham who could be productive in the lineup as well as playing good defense because he's been a Gold Glove defender in the past. So that's why I have him going to the Giants. But I'm interested to see what you say about the Astros. You have him.
I do have him going to the Astros, and I think it's interesting. Maybe some Grisham bombs into the Bay over in San Francisco. We'll see. But I have him going to the Astros, and this is a little shot in the dark because the Astros aren't really known for going after left-handed hitters, obviously, because they have the Crawford boxes. But Trent Grisham's a guy that can go the opposite way. He's a guy that can go the opposite way into those Crawford boxes, but he can also pull. And I think that, with the right-handed bats that the Astros already have in their lineup, obviously acquiring Correa now, so now they have Correa and Altuve back. And then if you could sign a guy like Grisham, that's a good balance between righties and lefties. Having two big righties in Correa and Altuve, and then two lefties in Yordan Alvarez, of course, and Trent Grisham. So I think it'll help them balance their lineup out a little bit. 4 years, $65 million. They could use a center field upgrade. Obviously, Jake Myers is there. He's solid center fielder, don't get me wrong. And who knows, he might even be the center fielder. Trent Grisham might move over to left or right. Maybe Altuve moves back to second. So many options that the Astros have. But at the end of the day, I think Grisham will find a role on this team, whether it's in left, center, or right. And I have him going to the Astros for 4 years, $65 million. And I think the Astros, they have to push now because their guys are only getting older. Their guys are only the contracts are only going to go down in terms of years. Their window's going to close eventually. So they have to figure out how to extend that window. I think Grisham can definitely lengthen this Houston Astros lineup.
I agree, 100%.
And that's basically going to wrap things up here for our first part of our free agent predictions. So happy that it is the MLB offseason. We couldn't stand watching the Dodgers win another World Series,
Nice.
but congratulations to them nonetheless. We hope that there is no three-peat. But that's basically going to do it here. Like we said earlier, big news, a big announcement in 2026. We are going to be rebranding the Empire Podcast to the Jake and Melo Show. We are so excited. Going to be covering so much sports, entertainment, whatever it may be. We are so excited. Couldn't be a better time than to start off the new year rebranding. And don't worry, it's not going to be a thing where we're rebranding every single year. This will be a permanent rebrand. Empire Podcast was just to get us out there. Obviously, we have a good following on TikTok. Instagram is starting to grow little by little. And obviously, we're having so much fun here on YouTube telling you what we think, especially when it comes to these free agent predictions.
Yeah.
But we are very excited for what the future holds here. And I hope you guys enjoyed this video talking about numbers 30 to 21, part 1 of our free agent predictions. Look out for part 2. It'll be coming soon. Thank you guys for watching, and we will see you guys in the next video. Peace!
Yeah.